Welcome to the Even Better podcast, where your host, Sinikka Waugh of Your Clear Next Step, brings you exciting content about making communities better by helping people get even better at work.
Well, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. This is Sinikka Waugh, and this is our next episode of the Even Better podcast, part of our ongoing mission here at Your Clear Next Step to help us all have even better workdays. Today, I am absolutely ecstatic to have Tim Ferry with us today. Tim, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Super excited to kind of talk about all these things.
Oh, this has been so great. I have had just a few chances to get to visit with Tim. And for our listeners, you are in for a treat. This has been a joy of a journey. Tim and I connected through a mutual colleague and friend. And even the first time that I even heard our mutual colleague, who is also a guest on our podcast and a long time friend. So if you haven't heard Lynn Swanson's podcast, go stop and check that out. But the first time that Lynn mentioned Tim and what he does, I said, stop talking right now and pause because you've got to connect us. And I am so glad that she did, because this has been an absolute joy of a journey. So Tim is he designs board games and has made he's got this career of pursuing creativity. So anyone who can make a career out of pursuing creativity is a hero to me, as far as I'm concerned. So, and he's done this in a way that he is demonstrating his own passion of helping others. And so right there, anyone who has known me for any length of time knows that we're going to find common ground. So being creative and pursuing that as a career, but grounding in helping others in that same passion. So he's got a love of music. He's composed music. He helps kids in after school time. He's got these wonderful stories about music and how he's done that. And then he has created a company that creates board games. So he can tell his story way better than I can, but the glimpses that I have had into this journey are just really, really astounding. And the genuineness that I have seen Tim show up in his absolute certitude that he is here to be creative in a way that helps others find their own way to make it through in their own creative journey. It's just really, really cool. So Tim, welcome, and tell us about you.
Thanks. I don't know how I can top that introduction. That is, I don't know how to go from there. So my name's Tim. I have designed a couple of board games, either in different stages, but a while ago, I made a game called Old Salt, took it to Kickstarter, just kind of took one step at a time, because no one ever starts with like, we're going to make a board game and then it's just done. You got to go through a bunch of different processes and iterations. It's definitely a journey. But I had a business partner. After we did the Kickstarter, we ended up trying to decide what we should do next. And so I took a previous experience where I taught kids how to play piano in after school clubs, and then the experience of making my own board game, and just kind of combined it. I created a curriculum, which I had never done before, but it turned out pretty well. And so now we're running that in after school clubs in various districts around Iowa. So we have like Johnston, we have Knoxville, we have Sadell and Waukee. Yeah, it's a blast to teach a kid how to kind of just take their wild idea, whether it's a farmer and their son, or if it's an asteroid that's like coming towards Earth, all of this stuff. And we can help them turn that idea into a playable, enjoyable board game, which is not something that a lot of people would consider maybe important, but like we're trying to help kids go from being consumers where they just stare at a screen or just like kind of going after school and just watching Netflix for a really long time. But now we're trying to get them to be creators, makers, and designers. And so the whole process of making a board game, that like journey, you can apply that in many other areas. And so we just want them to be able to explore whatever they want to explore and kind of just have fun with it.
Yeah. So you're hitting on a couple of things there, because that idea of the board game, it's not screen time, right? It's together time.
Yep.
But they're not just playing it, they're creating it. They're being makers in that process. So it's the creative, but then it's more than just creating it. It's creating it and sharing that experience with someone else. They get to bring someone else along in that. So I'm thinking about what that must bring to a child, right? I can create this thing, and then I can bring my big sister or my little brother or my mom or my
True.
dad or, Uncle Tony, and we can sit around a table and we can have this experience together. I can show them what I was dreaming about. I can show them this thing that was in my head, and now it's real.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen confidence just soar with either our summer camps or after school clubs where the kid starts off and he's like super shy. And by the end of it, they still have like a bit of their shyness, but they beam with like a joy and pride, a little, not unhealthy pride, but like they made a board game in a week. That's our summer camp. And they're like, I can show these people this, and like, look at what I have done, is kind of a really cool element that they might not have been able to experience prior to that.
Yeah. And how old are these kids doing this?
They're like third to fifth grade. We also offer it to sixth and seventh grade, but like, yeah, as young as third grade, which is like 8 years old.
That's amazing. That is really amazing. I mean, how did you know that board games,
I didn't.
how did you get there?
So I had a group of friends where we played Dungeons and Dragons, which is basically a role-playing game. So like somebody's a fighter, somebody's a paladin, all these like kind of fun little stories, adventures. And so I was the person in charge of telling the story, or at least telling how the players interacted with this story. And that's called a campaign. But like these campaigns can last years and years and years. And so me being an overzealous, eager dungeon master is what it's called, I had planned the entire campaign like years out, and I was like, this is how it's going to end. And what ends up happening in these campaigns is they usually drop off, people get busy, life gets in the way, and then everyone ends up being like, all right, we'll have to cancel this whole campaign. So I had made the entire thing like 2 years out, and I had planned for an event at the very end, and I was like, this would be really sweet as a board game, because I had like made my own system to get this situation to arise correctly. And so then after that, I was like, let's just see where it takes us. So I took one step at a time, made that system into a prototype, made that prototype into like playable rules that I could teach other people, went and play tested it with these really nice board gamers at a game store. But I was terrified. I prior to that had never like put myself out there, because these guys, they had just gotten done playing an actual published game. So like a game that costs money. And I was like, hey, I have some blue grid map paper. Would you want to play my game? And they were like, sure, I guess. It is terrifying. But at the end of it, they're like, that wasn't bad. And I was like, okay, I thought I was done. I thought the whole game was like kaput and we're good. But now I'm realizing this is just the start of the journey, which is, that happens so many times. I was like, we're good, we're done. And then you unlock almost like a new phase, a new adventure to go on. But just one next step, figuring out what the next best thing was for the project, and then just pursuing that until it was complete for 4 years. And then I was like, I could probably do this more. Like now that I've done it, I know the process, I know how to expedite it. And so now I have other people that I make board games for. And it's fun taking what their either target audience is or what they want out of the game, and then applying that into gamification. If that makes sense.
Cool. That is fabulous. So something that you were already passionate about, something that you already enjoyed, and then took a little risk, right? Went out of your comfort zone, stretched a little bit, found some success, and then stretched a little further. And then stretched a little further, right? Just took the very next step, if you will, right? With the very the next step that was in front of you. Very cool. Yeah. All right, so today you're here talking because we're not all gonna go start board game companies, and I'm thinking about our listeners and getting into the why are we here? We're talking about 5 ways that game design strategies. So you have these, you have these strategies that have worked for you, and you use them to make a breakthrough on your problem. So you've got some strategies that you use to break through on whatever problem, whatever thing is got you stuck. And I imagine we all get stuck from time to time. I can't imagine that you and I are the only two that get stuck. I know 100% of us on this call get stuck. And I have to believe that our listeners get stuck everywhere. So it's a matter of you've got 5 strategies that you use in game design that I suspect are applicable to all of our listeners in various ways at various moments. And you're going to take us through these 5 strategies that you use in game design to make a breakthrough. Right?
Yes.
All right, so
this is the hope.
This is the hope. All right, well, let's take them. So the first one is to break down the problem. All right, let's break it down. Take us there.
All right. So similar to after school clubs where you're telling a kid they're going to make a board game, they can either get overwhelmed or very excited, but like there is a whole wall that you have to climb up in order to make that game. So our process is breaking down that project into little teeny tiny bits. It ends up being an 8-week process, but each week has its own theme to cover. And so then for applying that outside of the board game realm, just kind of taking your problem, figuring out what elements there are to it, or parts, or sections, or facets, and then breaking those out, separating them, getting a new light on it, and then figuring out 1 or 2 steps that you can try to get towards just like another step towards that solution. So in board game design, if your problem is like the game is really confusing, you can break that out into like the rules are poorly written, the actions don't make sense. Because if you're telling someone they're going to grow some crops and they have to like do 3 spins to grow the crops, that doesn't make sense. That's confusing and it's not intuitive. And so if you have a confusing game, that could be one of the reasons. But then you just break out that problem and then kind of, I guess, separate it into what it could be. If that, I don't know, I might be explaining it poorly, but
No, I see where
essentially,
you're going.
yeah. So the way I kind of try to do it is I have a step that I can do today. So I'll rewrite the rules or rewrite a couple of the things that people do. And then the step for tomorrow, which would be the second step, is where you play test it and you kind of see if that alleviates the issue. Yeah, and then usually it does. And then after the step tomorrow, you can have your roadmap and then just kind of build that out. Let yourself have space so that your roadmap can be flexible as well. Maybe it's online so you can adjust things as needed.
So this makes total sense. A couple of things that you just said that would be totally applicable to experiences that I've had, right? One of them that you said about the clarity, maybe the action isn't clear, maybe the communication isn't clear, and we got to just make sure that the messaging, maybe my instructions weren't super clear. So there's an action I need to do today. I need to get clearer communication. Is my direction clear? Maybe there's an action I need to do tomorrow where I need to try that again. Okay, now that I have better messaging, maybe I'm clearer on the picture. Tomorrow, I'm going to try this action again. I'm going to reset. Maybe today wasn't a great day. Now with better instruction, I'm going to try this again tomorrow with a better plan, with a better action item. I'm going to try tomorrow. And then my roadmap looking forward, I'm going to have check-ins for myself on a fairly regular basis to make sure I'm still on track. So I'm going to establish maybe check-ins with my leader. I'm going to establish check-ins with myself against my goals. I'm going to establish check-ins to make sure I'm still doing the right thing towards my progress. I was working, maybe I got stuck against a problem that I was trying to tackle, but it was on a big picture plan. Am I still moving towards that big picture plan? Am I still on the right track?
100%. Yeah. And I think the roadmap also allows you to not get overwhelmed, or what I like to say, whelmed. So like if you try to build Rome in a day, or if you try to break this whole problem down and then solve all of them in a day, it might not be as good of a solution as if you spread it out over time.
Yeah. You got to tackle the little things.
Yeah.
The boil the ocean, eat an elephant, right? We've heard those expressions for years. They're not particularly favorable, but or pleasant to think of. But you don't do those things. You gotta break it down into manageable chunks.
Yes, definitely.
I love it. All right. So how about number 2? I know I'm going to love number 2. You've got something about building your team and involving others. Unpack this a little bit. There's more there. What all is involved in this step 2? What's your strategy here?
Yeah. So step 2, involving others, building your team, surrounding yourself with people that can help spur you on. So for me, when I was board game designing, I was great at getting the design kind of up and ready, but I had no idea how to do graphic design, and I didn't want to do it halfway. I knew that I was going to take this to a final product, and if I was going to do it, I wanted to do it correctly, and that's not a strength of mine. So in order to offset that weakness that I had to hire a team of a graphic designer and an artist, and just kind of like fill in the gaps that I did not have expertise in. So I guess the way that I would really apply this in just the real world is making sure you surround yourself with people that are going to spur you on, celebrate your victories, grieve with your losses, and just kind of like help you through the whole process. If this is like an entrepreneurial problem that you're dealing with, maybe you're just like, all right, I'm tired of hitting walls and I'm really letting my confidence down. You need to surround yourself with people that are going to boost you up. And it could be a different type of team in the corporate setting, but finding a team that's going to help you get through that problem. And I guess the only way you're going to have to do that is by figuring out what elements you need. So you got to take a strong reflection, which is tough sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So there's that old school of thought that said if you identify your weaknesses so you can work on them and you can fix them. And I subscribe to the school of thought that says identify your weaknesses so you can bring others alongside you to fill in
Definitely.
those gaps. And we are better together. And so I completely agree with you. If I'm struggling against a problem, it is likely because I don't have those skills to figure it out. And I got to go pull others alongside me who have that different lens or that different ability to help see things that I can't see from where I'm standing, or elevate lift my chin up a little bit so I can see it from a different angle. For sure. I absolutely believe that bringing others around. But you also said something else that's really important, and I don't want to lose sight of it, because sometimes it's about doing things that we can't do. But you also
Mhm.
said to cheer you on and to spur you on. And Tim, you were part of, and our listeners can know this, because I think this is really a cool piece of your Clear Next Step story, and it'll be on the permanent record now, that you were part of what I will go on record forever as saying has to this day been one of the most bucket filling day of my professional career so
Oh
far.
yeah.
And it's, I've had plenty of days in my in my professional career, but this was a bucket filling day in such a remarkable way, because last Friday we had a group of us. We were the launch group for the new Changemakers program that's coming out through your Clear Next Step. And we were cheering each other on. It wasn't just filling in gaps. It was
Mhm.
also that positive encouragement. And watching, there was a moment, it may have been before you got there, because I know that we were coming in, various ones of us were coming and going during the day, but there was a moment late morning or early afternoon when there was a collective catch of breath, and 15 people in the room looked at me and went, oh, I know why you haven't been sleeping all of these 6 months. Like, we get it. And there was this cheering on. And you said just recently, you need people to spur you on. And one of the nuts that I've been trying to crack, that nut, that tough nut, that problem to be solved, or sometimes problems or opportunities, right?
Mhm.
That you need people to cheer you on through it. Like, it's hard
Yeah.
running a marathon, hard, right? Tackling that big thing that you've never done before, hard. And sometimes you need that team to cheer you on and lift you up through that. And I think that was one of the things that day included in a really powerful way. It was an uplift.
It was a very cool day. I would highly agree. Yeah, that was a unique experience that I don't think I've ever been a part of something like that to that degree, of how like everyone was there for it and they were super stoked. It was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, that helped us tackle a problem, a
Yeah.
challenge problem, in the way that problems are opportunities sometimes. Yep.
Yeah. I
And
think
it's
you
about,
also you
yeah,
had
go
the
ahead.
right team with you on that day. You had the right people in the room to help make sure that that day was as successful as it could be, and I think it was as successful as it could be.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so let's move to number 3. So these are game design strategies. If you are just listening in and you've just joined this podcast, you need to go back to the beginning because you missed some really important stuff. We are here with Tim Ferry, and we're talking about 5 ways that game design strategies can be used to make a breakthrough on your problem, whether it's a problem or a challenge or an opportunity. First one was breaking down the problem. Second one was around building your team. We're on to number 3, which I super love: finding and fixing the root of the problem. Ooh, let's talk through that one.
Yes. So often in game design, there can be a lot of symptoms that you might think are roots. Maybe the game winning trigger is just like super frustrating to the players, or just things aren't working out well. Do you have to really dig deep and kind of do multiple playthroughs in order to get a sense of what the root actually is? Where sometimes people say you need to find a smoking gun in order to find the problem. In game design, you have to find multiple smoking guns in order to find the root of the problem. That way you don't just be like, okay, I found this, we're going to fix this. And then you put a band-aid on something that's bleeding, or not bleeding, but like broken. So you're like, that's not a long-term fix, and it's just causing more problems. So fixing the root, isolating that, and a little bit of this could be breaking down the problem, but really it's kind of with experience of just finding the right people to find the root if it's outside of your prerogative or purview. But kind of just getting to the root rather than fixing a bunch of symptoms that are not actually going to be alleviated by your quick fixes.
Yeah. My goodness gracious. It's like you've been sitting in on the problem solving classes. Were you a business analyst in a former life?
No, I don't think so. And I did music composition for college, so that's got no application on this one.
No, my goodness. So in our problem solving class, in one of the things that I teach in we've got a class called Right Stuff Problem Solving, is that when you're solving problems, you get to the right problem. So it's the problem that you can solve, it's a problem that you should solve, it's a problem that you want to solve, it's a problem that by solving it, other problems go away, right? And you don't just solve the first symptom, it's you get to the root. And when you're a business analyst, one of the first strategies they teach you as a business analyst is to ask why about 5 times to get to the root of the problem, right? Why does this problem exist? And why does this problem exist? And why, not why is it a problem, but why is this problem? Like, why does this problem exist?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what you're getting to. So can you give us any examples? Do you have any places where you've used this strategy either in your game design stuff or that you've seen it happen in workplaces?
Yeah, I do have a workplace example. So essentially, there is low workplace morale. So like people are not pleased. And so the employer does the classic try to fix all, or at least in my experience, it's been the fix all is a pizza party. And I don't know why they think that works, but it doesn't. So they do these pizza parties and everyone's like, all right, thanks for the pizza, appreciate it. And then a couple of weeks later, morale is still really low. Over the course of a few months, they try these or similar things like this in order to get morale up, because they think that the overall problem is morale, and it's this they're not digging deep into the root, or maybe they don't actually have the capacity to find the root. So after a little bit, the key star employees, the ones that are like the AAA dogs, they're leaving, they're gone, and so you're left with the C workers, which I mean they're doing their best, but like it's not panning out. So eventually, after kind of more things are starting to stack on, it's more than just workplace morale, it's other issues. Maybe like workplace drama is starting to pop up in the cafeteria or like the break room. And so it's just starting to look bad. So you hire a consultant in order to figure out what the actual root of the problem is, because up to this point, the last quarter, you have not been able to find it. Whether it's just a lack of asking the right questions, which goes back to the business analyst of really digging deep on 5 whys rather just what's going on, guys, can we get in order? So consultant does their job. This is what they're qualified to do. They're an expert at finding the root of the problem. And they end up figuring out that is a CRM, basically the system that people use in order to file basically their leads, like in a sales position. So notes that they had saved or deadlines that they had noted end up getting corrupted or just falling through. And it's not necessarily a salesperson's fault. It's just the CRM is outdated and not working as it properly should. So this creates frustration, failed sales, and just a bunch of other things that are going on. And so that's really the root of the problem. That's why people are frustrated at work, and that's why their morale is low, and that's why they're taking out their anger in the workplace by having workplace drama. So updating the CRM, suddenly the root of the problem is alleviated, and then the symptoms course correct and everything is as it should be. But it's just like finding the root of the problem is way more important than trying to solve the symptom, because the symptom's never going to go away.
Yeah.
That was kind of the best way that I've seen it applied, is finding the root.
Yep. That's a super real and super great example. And in that case, it's funny that you bring that as an example, because it's likely that in that case, that someone who was close to the system, so the CRM, someone who was close to that system had raised their hand and said, this system isn't working, the system isn't working, the system isn't working. And that person wasn't able to influence the change that needed to be changed to say, hey, we need to upgrade the system. This is an infrastructure. It's a systemic tool that we need to invest in the dollars and make the change. And they weren't able to influence where they needed to influence. And so it's interesting that that's exactly a place where this change makers program is going to wind up being helpful, because we need the people to talk about this is for the good of the business. This is exactly the kind of place where we need to put the good of the business first. We need to be able to talk about the systems and the process, put the good of the business first, then be able to influence and be able to make that authentic human connection to say because of the pain of this business, which is the root cause here, it's causing this authentic human pain, which we need to solve. These people are suffering because of this. right? And then we need to make the change because look at the degradation of quality of life around here.
Yep.
Let's flip it around and let's make it better.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yep.
And then on like even other like elements of like the human experience, it's like this is why we have all these different professions. Like you are not qualified to figure out why. Well, maybe you are, but like if you have a lower back pain, that's not necessarily your job to find the root of the problem. You got to get somebody like a chiropractor or a doctor or somebody who's going to be able to find the root of the problem, and then your symptom is going to alleviate itself.
Yeah.
If you have a long, like if you think it's just you need to massage your back but you actually need surgery, those are very different solutions. The only way
Right.
to figure that out is the root of the problem. So I think it's huge. I think that's my favorite one, probably out of the
Absolutely.
five.
Get to the actual root of the problem.
Yeah.
You bet. Love it. All right, so let's move on to number 4. You've got work backwards from an ideal solution. So this is interesting. Let's talk this one through. Work backwards.
Yeah, I think this could be akin to the self-fulfilling prophecy, fake it till you make it. There's another one that I thought of, but essentially like that mindset, I think this rather than like a normal type of problem, this could be like a relational situation. Maybe it's like you and a friend and you're at a problem where like we are just not vibing. We are not connecting as we normally do. So trying to figure out what you want the ideal situation to look like. So like me, my wife, she's awesome. But like if we were like, we're not happy, we could break down what we would like it to look like. Like maybe we go on more date nights. We have a babysitter so we're just able to focus on each other on the date night rather than having him with us in the high chair. He's adorable, but he is distracting when he's there. Like our focus is on him because he's so adorable. But just trying to figure out what an ideal solution would look like and then taking steps to get there, or at least mimicking what that would look like to the best degree. And then eventually also habits. That's what the other one was going to be, forming habits. So like you're not just going to naturally be at that solution, but you can figure out what that solution looks like and then mimic those, what that requires, which would be habit forming. And then I think it's 21 days or 28 days, but that's how much time it takes to actually form a habit. So this is what that is in a nutshell, or at the 3,000-foot view. So you're finding your ideal solution, figuring out how you could get there, and then doing that to get there, if that makes sense.
I love it. So the idea is I want us to communicate more in our relationship. I want this situation to look better. Okay, what does better look like? Let's practice doing that.
Yes.
And then see what were the habits formed that made it look like that. And then then maybe by doing that, we will have formed the habits that got us there.
Yep. And then the problem, which is poor communication, ends up being solved by the new habits that are formed. I think that's I've used it in a couple of situations and I think it's worked out pretty well, but also just persistence and trying to take the next right step, which is my new life philosophy the last few years. That might also play a part.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, I love it. So for a while there, I was teaching a class on accountability that was called Be What's Missing.
Mhm.
And I think this is tying into that. And the concept was, if you think there's not enough candor in this organization, then bring it to the table. If you think there's not enough communication, then bring the communication. If you don't think there's enough, if people aren't picking up after themselves, then be the one who picks up after yourself. Like if you think that stuff is missing, then be what's missing. Start to model it, because you can only fix the person in the mirror. You can't fix other people.
100%.
So it starts with you. But I see what you're saying, and maybe together. So you're taking this a step further though, and you're saying let's do it together. If the problem is interpersonal,
yep,
or the problem is with a team, then let's consciously, intentionally, let's commit to, let's do this together. We want better. Here's what better looks like. Let's practice being better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this also requires practical next steps, not theoretical. Because a lot of the times when people are like, all right, we need to improve our team, and they bring out these like just big jargon words, and you're like, yeah, but how do I apply that? So this is where you see like what you want it to look like, and then you're taking practical. I mean, I'm not saying that yours wasn't, because it definitely is practical.
Yeah.
That's why we do it. But like sometimes, at least in the corporate setting, I've seen where like management's like, all right, we're rolling out this new program and it's going to be great. And you're like, yeah, but that doesn't really impact me per se, because there's nothing practical that I can apply to get better. So I'm just going to do the same thing harder, I guess, which then just gets confusing.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's make it tactical. Let's do one tactical example. Would it look something like this? Maybe there's some disconnect. Maybe the problem is I'm wrestling with this whole work-life balance thing. Let's
Mhm.
see if there
Yep.
are people out there who wrestle with that. Eye roll. Right. I'm wrestling with this work-life balance thing, or I'm working with someone and we don't seem to work the same hours.
Mhm.
And I'm frustrated because you send me this infamous you send me emails at 11:30 at night, and I'm mad because you seem to think I should also work at 11:30 at night, and I don't want to work at 11:30 at night. So
Yes.
a tactical, practical thing, and now I'm mad because, or maybe the you is mad. You are now mad because you don't expect me to respond at 11:30. That's just when it's convenient for you.
Mhm.
So we put a practical, tactical thing in that says we will honor using the Outlook or whatever our email application is, delay send, and we'll send emails whenever we want, but they won't deliver until our regular working hours.
Yeah.
Or we'll put a signature line at the bottom that says, hey, we honor irregular working hours and responses are not expected outside of your regular working hours.
Yeah.
So something
That's huge.
tactical, right?
I wholeheartedly agree. Yeah, because someone could probably be stewing on this for the entire workday, and they don't get a solution until 11:30 at night, and they get that idea. It's the same way when I made the game for you. I woke up at 6 in the morning. I was like, here's the idea. That was not my normal working hours. Normally I start at 9, but like this, I was like, all right, I'm gonna go downstairs, type it out, and then I sent it off as soon as it was done. But like it's the same situation. Like they might not normally work at 11:30, but that was just when it worked best for them in order to get it off of their mind so that they could sleep. So telling them not to send it would just be kind of rude because they would have typed it out in a draft. But like having them send it and then delay send so that it arrives at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. is perfect. That is an accurate, I think, very applicable solution. Yeah.
Like, but we could agree to it as an
Oh yeah.
organization. We could say, here's what we're going to agree to. We're going to do maybe this, or here's another option, or so that we can communicate. But that's tactical. It's practical. Here's a way to work backwards in this practical thing that lets us talk about it together.
Yes. Yep. 100%. Yeah.
All right. Let's move to number 5. We're talking if you're just joining in, seriously, you've missed it. Rewind. We're on 5 ways game design strategies can be used to make a breakthrough on your problem. And we're on number 5. And I think the other thing we probably better talk about is the fact that we wouldn't necessarily use all of these strategies on the same problem. You might
Correct.
use these different strategies to tackle different problems.
Yep.
Okay. So the 5th one is to revisit, to come back, test it. Oh, this seems practical. Let's unpack
Yeah.
this one.
Yeah. So in board game design, oftentimes you think you have the solution to the problem, and it might go away for a few different playthroughs, but it's healthy to go back to what either the symptom or the root was and be like, was this actually alleviated? Maybe you solved a different root of the problem and there's a different root that's still there. Because in game design, there can be 50 roots, a lot of weeds and a lot of symptoms, and you solve one, you definitely did it. But the symptom you were trying to alleviate is actually still there. So coming back with a fresh brain, fresh mindset, usually I think like a few days at least. I usually try to do a week is where I give it a break and then I come back with fresh eyes and the problem just kind of shines. It's just like, here I am, look at me. And then you're able to do your job a little bit easier. It's similar to like where if you are writing something and you make 20 different versions of it and then you show it to somebody else and then they're like, you spelled there wrong, dude. And you're like, oh my goodness, how did I not see this? Because I learned that in first, second grade. So coming back, revisiting and testing it is, I think, critical. And it's a mature way to look at a problem long term. Going back to like the third thing about fixing the root of the problem, like if you had workplace morale and you were like, all right, we're good, we don't need to worry about that at all, and then you come back 6 months later and workplace is a little bit still low on the morale, you could just kind of go back and revisit it, see if, I guess, really talk to the people on the floor and see what's going on, but like revisit it, test it, and kind of come back to it.
Yeah. See if that problem is still there. How is morale? Don't assume, right? We know better than to assume anyway, but let's make sure that it's really fixed. Let's check. And I liked your idea there about showing it to a friend, right? Let's test it maybe with an outside source. Let's not assume that our eyes are the only eyes that should look at this, because sometimes we're too close to it.
Yep.
Sometimes we see what we want to see. And maybe having a second opinion, having a second set of eyes on that is healthy, because we did spell there. That's the wrong there.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I've been there. No pun intended.
Yeah, same. I sent over a document a couple of weeks ago for an event that we're doing, and I was like, "How does this look?" And they're like, "Yeah, if you could just fix the typo." And I was like, what typo?" And I like read through it 3 more times, and then she was like, "Oh, this typo on line 4, like word number 5." And I was like, "What?" It's just like, how did I not see this at all? It was complete. It was a horrible typo. I don't even remember what it was, but it was like blatant, is what it was.
Yep. But sometimes we just get too close to it.
Yeah.
Set it aside and then come back, maybe have someone else look at it too. But the come back after space too, right? Space and time, letting our eyes rest, letting a good night's sleep pass, or a few good nights sleep pass between us and the tackling it. Come back and see, did we really fix it? Like a couple of cycles go through, whatever couple of playthroughs, I think is the word you used.
Yeah. And this probably would be best applied to a problem that's not like bleeding or broken. So like if you don't need emergency like work, like I guess if you're gonna like if a physical person, like if you broke your arm, you're not gonna wait a few nights to see if this is gonna like be good to go. But like a different type of problem that has a little bit more long-term solution, or it's just a bigger overall situation that is gonna take more thought, make a few steps, apply it, see if it's working, and then go back to try to fix it. But like if it's an emergency, this one specifically is probably not the one for you in this situation.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and looking at problems as opportunities, the flip side of any challenge that's in front of us as an opportunity, when we're looking at incremental solutions, this is another one. So put a solution in place, test that. Okay, have we moved us up a notch? All right. Yeah. So now let's try the next thing. Have we moved us up another notch? Have we addressed this? So thinking it not just as tackling something problematic and resolving something bad, but addressing something that is an opportunity and moving us forward. That incremental test. Okay, are we a little bit better? Okay, are we a little bit better now? Are we a little bit better now? I think that it applies that same direction too.
100%. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. What fun. So we've got 5 strategies here, 5 ways game design strategies. I can absolutely see how you would use these in the game design work that you do, but wildly applicable to whether you're working in corporate, whether you're running your own business, whether you're trying to raise kids or, have a relationship with someone. I can see how all of these would be applicable in a wide variety of circumstances. Thank you, Tim, for sharing your insights.
No problem. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about them. It's been fun.
This is great. Well, and this would not be the Even Better podcast if I didn't ask my trademark question. What's making you even better these days?
I've been thinking about this a lot. I think the thing that's really making me better right now is the people that I've surrounded myself with. My wife, she's a fantastic teammate, but also like my friends and coworkers that I have alongside me to like spur me on. Because I had a few weeks ago, I had something happen where I was like, this is devastating. This is rough. And they like helped me go through it and kind of like, what do you need? We're here for you. But also helping me like celebrate in a way that's not going to ruin my next day. Almost like if you go back to like college days, you're like, wow, my whole weekend is ruined because of what I did yesterday. Like the people that I've surrounded myself with, my next day is great. And I can keep going the track that I want to be going on. And I'm not sidetracked or like, I'm not losing days. So I'm really happy with the people that I've surrounded myself with. And I think that's what's really making me better, I would say.
That's fantastic. Love hearing that. Well, Tim, thank you again for your time. Just really, really appreciate the gift of time that you've given us today.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
This is great. And to all of our listeners, thank you for joining us. And on behalf of all of us here at Your Clear Next Step, we hope the rest of your day is even better.
Thank you for tuning in today. The Even Better podcast will be back with more content soon. But in the meantime, subscribe to our podcast or check out our website at yourclearnextstep.com for more information. See you next episode.